In this lesson, we need to continue our discussion of mutual assent and the offer, more specifically termination of the offer. But before we jump into termination of the offer, just as a quick refresher, how do we go about forming a traditional enforceable contract? Well, remember there's three elements, right? We need mutual assent between the parties, consideration, and no defenses to formation that would invalidate the otherwise valid contract. Now, in case you're wondering, in our big picture flow, where are we? We're talking about formation of the traditional enforceable contract, and we're on the M in my cats do sneak, mutual assent between the parties, right? And remember, what is mutual assent between the parties? We know that it's an element that we need to form a traditional enforceable contract, but what is mutual assent? Remember, we said mutual assent is just this idea that we need a meeting of the minds between the parties, this idea that there has to be a mutual understanding or mutual agreement between the parties in order to form a traditional enforceable contract. Well, how do we make that determination on a contract law fact pattern? Remember, we said that we're going to need the formation of a valid offer and a valid acceptance of that offer. Once we have an offer and acceptance, we say we have mutual assent between the parties. And remember, in our last video, we talked about how a valid offer is formed. Remember there, we said there's three elements. The offeror must manifest an objective willingness to enter into the agreement that creates a power of acceptance in the offeree and also specifies all the necessary terms of the deal. Once the offeror meets those three elements, remember we said, well, then you have formation of a valid offer. So in our mutual assent analysis, all that's left to determine once we know we have an offer is there a valid acceptance of that offer? And one thing we have to think about, and something that's unique about the offer analysis, is the timing, the timeline, because a lot of times in a contract law fact pattern, a lot can happen from the time that an offer is formed until it's purportedly accepted. And in today's lesson, we want to talk about all of the events that can happen from the time that an offer is formed until the offeree reportedly accepts the offer. Because if an event happens in this timeline after formation of the offer but before the purported acceptance of that offer, if there's an event that happens in that timeline that terminates the offer, then we can't have a valid acceptance of the offer. Once an offer is terminated, it's dead forever. That offer cannot be accepted. And if the offer can't be accepted, then we can't have mutual assent between the parties, which means we can't have a traditional enforceable contract. So this analysis is going to be really important for our big picture discussion of formation of the traditional enforceable contract. But I think the best way to do this is just to jump into examples, start running through things. So we'll draw it up and talk about this a lot. So generally, what you see on a contract law fact pattern, there's usually 7 ways that you see this tested, 7 different types of events that can happen on the timeline that can terminate the offer before it's accepted. And remember, once an offer is terminated, it's dead forever. That offer can never be accepted. The only way that offer can be revived, so to speak, or brought back from the dead is if a new offer is formed. But we'll talk about that in detail. I just want to stress the importance of understanding, and we need to really grasp this concept that once an offer is terminated, that offer that was terminated is dead forever. It cannot be accepted. It's critical to understand that point to get this whole concept down. But again, let's just work through it, right? So the first type of termination that we have, the first event we want to look out for from the time an offer is formed until it's accepted, is this idea of revocation. Generally, we say the offeror is free to revoke his offer at any time before acceptance. Now, a revocation of an offer can be express or it can be constructive. So an express revocation happens when the offeror actually expressly communicates a revocation to the offeree. And generally, he's going to be free to do that. So for example, let's say that I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5. And then 2 seconds after I form this offer, 2 seconds later, I say, you know what? I changed my mind. I revoke. So we have formation of the valid offer. Remember, we run through 3 elements to make that determination. The offeror must manifest an objective willingness to enter into the agreement that creates a power of acceptance in the offeree and specifies all the necessary terms of the deal. In that situation, I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5. All 3 elements are met. We have a valid offer, right? So the offer is for the dry erase marker, $5, right? Which I'm trying to draw up here. So we have an offer. I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5. We know we have formation of a valid offer. Only problem is 2 seconds later, I say, I revoke, right? I revoke, right? So basically, I've just changed my mind. As the offeror, I say, I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5. 2 seconds later, I say, you know what? I changed my mind. I revoke. And then let's say 2 seconds later, you say, you know what? No, Michael, your offer was good. I accept. Well, what do we do in this situation? How does that play out? Well, the offer formation was valid. That was a valid offer. Problem is, I expressly communicated a revocation to you before your purported acceptance. So that terminated that offer forever. My $5 offer is now dead. So when you say I accept, that does nothing. You can't accept a dead offer, a terminated offer. So we can't form mutual assent on that original offer, right? You can't accept an offer that is dead. Okay, now what would happen if we change where this I revoke happened? What if this happened after your purported acceptance? What if it happened over here on the timeline? So in this example, I say, I offer to sell you my dry erase marker for $5. You say, I accept, and then 2 seconds later, I say, you know what? I changed my mind. I revoke my offer. Well, is that a valid offer and acceptance? Do we have mutual assent? Yes, right? Because the revocation or the attempted express revocation happens after the acceptance. Remember, termination of the offer only applies from the point the offer is formed until the purported acceptance. Anything that happens after the purported acceptance, we don't care about in terms of termination of the offer, right? An offer cannot be terminated after it's been accepted. It's only this dotted dash point on the timeline, right? Okay, so that's an express revocation. And remember, the general rule is that an offeror is free to revoke an offer at any time prior to acceptance. But that is a general rule because we do have some exceptions we want to think about, which we have right here, right? There are some types of offers that we say are irrevocable. If any of these 4 situations happen, we say that at that point the offeror is actually not free to revoke the offer. Okay, so number 1, we have the option contract. An option contract is simply where the offeree is paying additional consideration to have the option to purchase at a later date. So, for example, let's say that I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5. And if you pay me an additional $1, I offer to hold the contract open or hold the offer open for 7 days. So I say to you, I'll sell you this dry erase marker for $5, and if you pay me an additional $1, I'll hold this offer open for 7 days. That's an option contract. So the moment you hand me that $1 to execute your option, for the next 7 days, I cannot revoke the offer. So if you hand me $1 to hold the option open, for the next 7 days, I cannot revoke the offer. You're free to accept for 7 days, right? Now, notably, I guess actually we'll come back to that. So the idea though here is that the key, rather, is that the offeree has to pay additional consideration, right? I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5, and if you pay me an additional $1, I'll hold the offer open, right? The key is that additional $1. Without that additional consideration, it's not an option contract, and the offeror is still free to revoke without the additional consideration. Okay? Next, we have the UCC firm offer. This is going to come from UCC 2-205 if you want to look up the statute, but we'll put the exact language below this video in your handouts, etc. But the idea here is that, and remember, this is the red universe, step 2, if we're dealing with the UCC, the purchase or sale of a good, and we have a merchant, right? And a merchant in the UCC is somebody who regularly deals with the good at issue. So if we're talking about a dry erase example, I'm offering to sell you a dry erase marker for $5. A merchant in this context would be probably someone who's a representative at an office supply store, somebody who regularly deals in the purchase and sale of dry erase markers. So, if you are a merchant, you're a person who regularly deals with the goods in the contract, right? Which would not be me. So for this example, imagine that I am a merchant and I regularly sell dry erase markers, right? I'm a representative, a sales rep at an office supply store. So I'm a merchant, right? Well, if I'm a merchant, I can make a firm offer to sell somebody a good, right? And that means under 2-205, if I do it in writing and I sign it, right? A merchant makes an offer in writing and signs that writing and expressly promises in that writing to hold the offer open. That's under 2-205, a firm offer. And that offer is now irrevocable, right? And as a note, if the merchant doesn't specify the exact amount of time he's going to hold the offer open, the UCC says that it's a reasonable amount of time not to exceed 90 days. So if I'm a merchant and in a signed writing I say, I promise to hold this offer open, I'm promising, I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5 and I promise to hold this offer open, but I don't specify an exact amount of time I'm going to hold it open, the UCC will say it's a reasonable amount of time, but that time cannot exceed 90 days. So the key here for a firm offer is to recognize that number one, we need a merchant. I guess number one, right, UCC universe only applies to purchase or sale of goods. Number two, we need a merchant, right? Somebody who regularly deals with the goods at issue. It has to be in a signed writing, right? So a verbal firm offer doesn't exist. It has to be in a writing signed by the merchant. Now, the key to recognize the difference between a UCC firm offer and an option contract, other than obviously that UCC firm offers only apply to purchase or sale of goods and only to merchants, and it has to be in writing. But the big difference, right, between an option contract and a UCC firm offer is going to be this idea that a firm offer does not require additional consideration to hold it open, right? If we have a merchant and a signed writing, there's no need for additional consideration. For an option contract to hold an offer open, to actually make the offer irrevocable, we say that the offeree has to pay additional consideration to hold that offer open. So just with these two in mind, right, a common contract law trick that you want to look out for goes like this. Let's say that it's me, I'm not a merchant, right? So I'm back to just Michael, the law school bar exam instructor, right? Not somebody who regularly deals in dry erase markers, okay? So let's say that I say to you the following. I offer to sell you this dry erase marker, and I promise, so help me God, that I will not sell it to anyone else for the next 7 days. This is what I say to you. I'm offering to sell you this dry erase marker for $5, and on my mom's life, I'm not going to sell this dry erase marker to anyone else for the next 7 days. Okay? And then let's say the next day, you say, okay, let me think about it. I'll get back to you sometime in the next week. And let's say the next day I sell it to someone else and I call you up and say, you know what, I'm revoking that offer. I'm going to sell it to someone else. Can you say that the offer was irrevocable, right? Well, let's think about it. Is that an option contract? Are you paying additional consideration to hold that offer open? No, right? Am I a merchant? Is this an assigned writing from a merchant? No, so UCC 2205 doesn't apply. That example is neither an option contract or a UCC firm offer. So in the eyes of the law, an empty promise to hold an offer open is meaningless. I'm free to revoke that offer, even if I explicitly say, I promise I won't, right? You either have to pay additional consideration to make it irrevocable, or we have to satisfy the requirements of 2205 as a firm offer. Me simply saying, I promise I won't sell this to anyone else, means nothing, okay? Unless, again, it's an option contract, you're paying for that option, or we satisfy the requirements of 2205 under the UCC. All right, so that's our option contract and our firm offer. If either of these happen, the offer becomes irrevocable. From that point forward, the offeror in this timeline cannot revoke the offer. Next, we have this idea of the offeree starting performance on a unilateral offer. Now, unilateral offers and bilateral offers we'll talk about in a lot more detail when we get to our videos on acceptance. So for right now though, just so we can have an idea in our head, the idea of a unilateral offer is that if the offeror requests acceptance of the offer by requesting some type of specific performance, we call that a unilateral offer. For example, if I say to you, I'll sell you this dry erase marker for $5, and in order to accept my offer, you must pay me $1 each day for the next 5 days. Because I am requesting acceptance by a specific performance, we call that a unilateral offer. Now, if I just say to you, I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5, and I'm not specifying any performance you must satisfy in order to accept, that's called a bilateral offer, right? And you can just accept with a return promise, like saying, I accept, right? But again, we'll get into bilateral and unilateral offers and contracts more when we talk about acceptance. For right now, just bear with me understanding that a unilateral offer is this idea where the offeror is requesting acceptance by some type of specific performance. So let's stick with that example, right? I offer to sell you a dry erase marker for $5, and I say, in order to accept, you must pay me $1 every day for the next 5 days. Well, when you start performance, when the offeree starts performance on a unilateral offer, we say from that point forward, the offer is irrevocable. So the second that you pay me that first dollar installment, from that point forward, I'm not going to be able to revoke the contract. I'm not going to be able to revoke the offer from that point forward. Once you begin performance on a unilateral offer, I can no longer revoke the offer, right? So that is when an offeree starts performance on a unilateral offer. But again, we'll get into way more detail on this when we get to acceptance, and we'll come back and retouch on this at a lot of detail later. But for now, just recognize that if we do have a unilateral offer, from when the offeree starts performance on the unilateral offer forward, that offer becomes irrevocable. The offeror can no longer revoke the offer. Finally, similar to this, we have detrimental reliance. This is pretty straightforward. If we have an offer, you typically see this in construction contracts with raw materials. right? And in some other contexts, but imagine that I offer to have you build me a tree house for $1,000. I'm commissioning you to build me a tree house for $1,000, right? That's my offer to you. Pay you $1,000 if you build me a tree house. And so before you accept this offer, you go out and you start buying raw materials to build the tree house. You spend $100 on lumber. After you spend the $100 on lumber, I try to revoke the offer, right? Well, that could be starting performance on a unilateral offer. We could talk more about that later. But under detrimental reliance, which you'd want to discuss on a contract law fact pattern, if the offeree is reasonably and foreseeably relying on the offer to his detriment, from the moment that detriment is incurred forward, the offer becomes irrevocable. So in that example, I offer to pay you $1,000 to build me a tree house, and you go out and you rely on that offer, and you do this reasonably and foreseeably, which is what it would be to go buy some lumber for the project. Well, now you've incurred a detriment relying on my offer. And as long as that detriment is incurred both reasonably and foreseeably, which it would be if you're buying lumber to build a tree house, then the offer now becomes irrevocable. You're relying on that offer to your detriment. Really, the main things to remember there just are that it has to be reasonable and foreseeable, right? To show kind of the other side of that, if I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5, and then you go out and buy $1,000, whiteboard, and you try to claim that you did so in reliance on a $5 dry erase marker, that's probably not going to hold up as reasonable and foreseeable, right? What reasonable person is going to spend $1,000 on a whiteboard just because they've been offered a $5 dry erase marker, right? Probably not going to be able to satisfy the requirements needed to say that that offer is now irrevocable, right? So this is the idea, though, of express revocation, right? Which is the first way, where the offeror is actually expressly communicating to the offeree that he is revoking the offer. And remember, generally, the offeror is free to revoke it any time before acceptance, unless one of these situations happens that makes the offer irrevocable, right? So the next idea, though, the next way in this timeline of events we want to look out for is the constructive revocation. And what we have with a constructive revocation is where an offer is formed, and before the purported acceptance, the offeree learns that the offeror has taken an action that is absolutely inconsistent with a continuing ability to contract. From the moment the offeree learns that the offeror has taken an action that's absolutely inconsistent with a continuing ability to contract, we say the offer is terminated. It's dead. It cannot be accepted. And usually the way that you're going to see this, to stick with our $5 dry erase marker example, would be, let's say that I offer to sell you this dry erase marker for $5. You say, let me think about it, right? So we have a valid formation of an offer. You say, let me think about it. And then a few hours later, you learn at this point in time that I've actually sold this very dry erase marker to another student. So you learn about this and you're like, oh no, I need to accept that offer. So you call me immediately and say, Michael, you know what? I accept your offer. You're not going to be able to do that. That's a constructive revocation. From the moment you learned that I took an action absolutely inconsistent with a continuing ability to contract, that terminated the offer. You can't now accept it. That offer is terminated. It's dead forever, right? And generally, with a constructive revocation, the main way you see that tested is kind of like the example I just laid out, where the offeree learns that the offeror has actually sold the item in question to somebody else, right? That's usually where you see constructive revocation. The next idea we have is rejection, the third way that we can have a termination of the offer, right? it would be a rejection. Thank you so much for watching this video preview of our Legal Education Accelerator Program, or LEAP for short. If you would like to see the conclusion of this video and gain full access to our entire 1L and 2L video library, integrated outlines, streamable audio versions, additional practice exams with explanations, and much more, we invite you to head over to our website and join the thousands of law students who have already enrolled. To get started with your no-risk free trial today, simply click the link in the description box below or visit www.studicata.com/leap.
Hi everyone, my name is Serena and I'm currently a law student at South Texas College of Law, Houston.
Hi everybody, my name is Shiva and I'm currently a law student at Southwestern.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle and I am a first year student at South Texas College of Law, Houston. I used the Studicata study video series last semester to help me prepare mostly for contracts, and I actually made an A+ in contracts last semester, which I greatly dedicate to the Studicata videos.
By using Studicata to help me prepare for my final exam, I was able to score the highest grade out of my class on the final and even have my essay distributed as the model answer. Not to mention I had done quite poorly on the midterm and was struggling throughout the whole course of the semester, understanding the material and keeping up with lectures.
Because of the Studicata video lectures, I was able to go into my exams with a feeling of confidence. I didn't have to worry about what the rules of law were or how I was going to organize my answer to an essay question.
I would absolutely recommend the Studicata series and their online course materials to anyone. I think that they are not like professor lectures that you might find online or other outside study materials that you may encounter. I think that the Studicata videos really focus on not only ensuring that you understand the material that you're going to encounter on your final, but they also help you to understand kind of the best method for test taking, and they really break down how to approach each problem and the best ways to tackle certain methods on testing, and I think that's really important, and I think it's really special. I don't see that anywhere else in any of the other online resources that I've found. So I would certainly recommend Studicata to anyone who is studying in law school right now. Good luck on your studying and you're going to do great.
I would definitely recommend Studicata to anybody watching this video. Give it a chance. I'm positive that you will love it, that you will get a lot out of it, and that you will be happy that you gave it a chance. I definitely am. I know I will be using Studicata in the future.
And I cannot thank Studicata enough for getting me through my first semester of law school. I will definitely continue to watch the Studicata video lectures throughout my law school career, and I highly recommend that any future or current law student do the same.